Toronto might not be for you. If you are considering moving here and you are not from Toronto, you're not from anywhere close to Toronto, you might want to really investigate what is it that Toronto has to offer, and does it mesh with my needs and my personality, the needs of maybe my family, because again, it's not for everybody. People might be telling you, oh, you got to move to Toronto. Maybe you shouldn't. What I'm going to do is in this video, I'm going to cover 5 reasons why Toronto might not be for you so that you can make an assessment as to whether this is the right landing destination for you or whether you need to look elsewhere. Reason number 1 is that downtown, and I mean downtown Toronto, lacks character. The knock on it is that it's all just a bunch of glass towers that all look very uniform. It is nothing like, let's say, Chicago or maybe New York that have a bunch of interesting buildings. It's nothing like maybe Montreal or Quebec City, also in Canada, where there's a lot of historical buildings and that like old world character, or like what you'd find in maybe other major European cities, for example. Toronto is a very new city. I will admit that I'm not a Toronto historian, but the vast majority of kind of tall development that has happened in Toronto has been since at least the 90s. Since then, cost of materials, cost of labor is incredibly high compared to when, let's say, Chicago and New York and, Paris and London, etc., were being developed and, were becoming world stage cities. Because of that, Toronto downtown has ended up getting this kind of like very uniform kind of look, and it's kind of boring for the most part. Now, most of the vibrant neighborhoods that exist within Toronto are outside of the immediate downtown area, but there are a couple of areas that I would point out that I think are quite lovely, and I would consider them really kind of prime downtown. So, for example, Kensington Market has a lot of character and a lot of cool things going on. I personally really love the St. Lawrence Market or the Bearsky Park area. And then lastly, the Distillery area, which is, admittedly very touristy, but it's touristy for a reason. It's very pretty, and there's a lot of very cool buildings there. But the pockets that are most vibrant, but the majority of the vibrant neighborhoods that exist within Toronto are just outside of that pocket. So we're talking Roncesvalles and Little Italy and Yorkville and that kind of stuff, but you will find a couple of pockets downtown for sure. For me, there's not much of a downtown strip like you would find in a lot of other kind of major North American cities. King West is probably the closest thing to it, running from along King Street from Spadina to Bathurst. But that's kind of the closest thing to it for me. Now, what I will say as far as downtown Toronto character is considered, the thing that has going for it is that there are 2 major sports venues right downtown. We've got Rogers Centre, formerly Skydome. Somebody of my age still calls it Skydome. And we've got Scotiabank Place. It's where the Leafs, the Jays, and the Raptors all play. And when there is a game, especially a playoff game, when there is a concert or some type of comedy show or whatever, and you've got everybody kind of gathering there and then coming out afterwards, there's a great energy and a great vibe. So that absolutely adds to it. Not every major city has their sporting venues right downtown. Toronto does have that going for it. Reason number 2 that Toronto might not be for you, it is very crowded here. There is nearly an estimated 3 million people in Toronto proper. There is roughly a little over 7 million estimated people in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. That makes it the 4th most populated city in North America, which I think a lot of people, and particularly people who live in Toronto, kind of forget that it's a highly populated place. That means that it is fairly tall. It's very dense, the living. If you are downtown, you are kind of constantly surrounded by tall buildings, tall skyscrapers. And so if you are the type of person who likes wide open spaces, city is not for you. With the number of people, it means a couple things. 1, there's lineups for stuff everywhere. And there's not enough stuff per capita for the number of people who require the different kind of like services and shops and those kinds of things. So you'll find grocery stores and Costco feels almost perpetually busy, and you're always kind of searching for the times where you can go and you're not going to be like completely overwhelmed with other people and waiting in lines for forever. While I would say that Toronto has a great amount of green space, even still, parks feel overused. And something that I want to put on your radar is that there very often is very long wait lists for daycare. So if you are considering moving to Toronto and you have kids and daycare is a necessity for you, you could be looking at a year or more of a wait list for daycares in certain pockets in the city. Reason number 3, Toronto might not be for you. It is a very fast-paced city, and it often, I find, alters the perception of how friendly it is here. I'll talk about the pace first. The hustle culture in Toronto absolutely is real. I think it is for a lot of major cities, so I don't think Toronto is unique in that sense. People always have places to be. They're always kind of headed somewhere, always very purposeful, like on a mission, probably because it takes so long to get to where you need to go. So that absolutely is a part of it. But Toronto is not a very laid back place like a lot of other kind of smaller cities or towns in Ontario or in other parts of Canada or in other parts of the world for the most part. And some people can find the pace exhausting. So if you're the type of person who appreciates a little bit more of a laid back lifestyle and doesn't like everything to be kind of like go, 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 Toronto might not be for you. And the thing about the unfriendliness, there is I think a commonly reported knock that Toronto is not a friendly place. I personally disagree with that. I've lived in a lot of different places in Southern Ontario and I've lived internationally as well. I was counting, I think 7 different places since I was old enough to remember. So probably from the age of like 4 or 5. And I personally find Toronto to be just as friendly as other places where I have lived. But because everybody is always going somewhere and is on a mission and is very purposeful, there's not really a lot of time for people to be kind of openly friendly with other people in their proximity. So if you're used to small town friendliness, if that's something that you want as part of your regular lifestyle, Toronto may not be the best option for you. Reason number 4, if you are a person who has lived a portion of your life without a car, you may find that that won't be the case when you move to Toronto. Certainly depends on where you move to, but in most areas of the city, you're probably going to need a car. And I'm going to use some recent clients of mine as an example. They moved here from very major international city. They lived right in the heart of that city and did not have a car. And this is a family of 4. When they moved to Toronto, they did purchase a place in a neighborhood that I would say is not necessarily terribly transit friendly. And one of the first things that they did is they bought a car. They're not upset about it necessarily, but they lived the majority of their life without a vehicle in the city that they came from. So it's just kind of a prime example of that happening. It is well documented that the TTC, our transit service in the city, is underfunded. The service isn't reliable, typically due to aging infrastructure and mechanical issues and that kind of stuff. The other problem is, and I've talked about this in other videos as well, that the coverage isn't great. So we basically have 2 major lines. One is in a U shape, kind of in the middle. One goes across the middle. We are getting another east-west. It's supposed to be opening sometime soon across Eglinton, but you could be in many different parts of the city and not have great access to subway, which is kind of the most efficient transit. The street level transit is not great because most of it is subject to moving at the same pace as cars, and the city is so congested with traffic that, our streetcars and our buses and stuff like that, it's hard for them to get around at any different pace than people are in their own vehicles. Certainly part of the reason why we have such bad congestion with traffic. On that note, yes, traffic sucks. It's terrible. Find me a major city in the world where traffic is not terrible. I'm not necessarily saying that Toronto is on the same level as, Mexico City or Tokyo or something like that. Certainly not from a population standpoint, but compare Toronto's traffic to, let's say, the top 5 most populated cities in North America. Toronto's number 4, and tell me which one of those 5 don't have terrible traffic. If you look at awful traffic city rankings across the world, Toronto doesn't even rank anywhere close to the top 10. So yes, the traffic is bad. Canadians will complain about it constantly, but on a grand scheme of things, it's not as bad, nearly as bad as it can be in other parts of the world. So if you are not a driver and you are not into car culture, but it is important for you to move to Toronto, you will want to very strategically purchase where it's easy for you to get to transit access, or if you're a biker, which there are lots in the city as well, make sure that you are living in an area that you can get to and from where you're going using bike lanes and relatively safe bike paths. And last but not least, and certainly a very common complaint amongst many Ontarians and people who live in and around the city, is the cost of living. So the average rent for a 1-bedroom property downtown is around $2,300 a month. It's obviously very high. The peak average price for a home in 2025 so far is around $1.15 million. The peak median price this year is $930,000. That is a lot of money for any type of home, again, on average or the median, depending on what you're looking at. And generally speaking, the other kind of major costs, so we talked about housing, but other things like utilities and groceries and transportation, including opportunity costs when you're spending a lot of time either stuck in traffic or on TTC, all can be very expensive, all contribute to a very high cost of living. From what I hear from my friends, from what I read online and that kind of stuff, it's very difficult for people on single incomes to thrive in the city. So if you are considering moving to Toronto as a single person, take a long look at the income that you're going to be making while here in the city, the type of lifestyle that you'd like to lead, and whether those things are compatible with what the cost of living may be for you, because Toronto, no question, is an expensive city. So like I said, Toronto might not be for you. And, if I'm starting to kind of check a lot of boxes in the negative in terms of saying, well, I wouldn't like that, and I don't think I'd like that either, and no, that doesn't sound great to me either, then you may want to consider looking at another kind of landing spot. It depends obviously on, personal family circumstances, but if you're looking at options between Toronto versus Vancouver versus Calgary versus Montreal, then you would want to investigate some of these same 5 things in the other places to see if another major city in Canada is more compatible with how you want to live and your financial circumstances as well. So I hope you found this video helpful. I certainly hope I didn't steer you away from Toronto, but at the same time, if it's not for you, I think the last thing I would want is somebody move here and be like, wait a second, nobody told me that. And then you'd have to just kind of pick up and move anyway, because it's a big investment to make a change and come to Toronto from wherever it is that you're watching. So give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who you think it may be relevant for, if you think that they might be making a mistake, or at least really solidifying whether Toronto is right. And if you're looking at moving to Toronto and you need some help with your housing plans, whether you're looking to rent or purchase, I would be more than happy to help you. You can find my contact information or a link to book a no obligation consult with me in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.